Hi friends, this is Laura with Potpourri of Life. I hope that you had a wonderful day. Today, or this evening, it's kind of late, this evening what I want to talk about is how one can use herbs. And yeah, I'm kind of cheating at my notes because what I'm pulling up is an article I wrote in 2018. It's on a website that I'm also shutting down. I have about 4 websites that I'm slowly closing down. And this one was my Potpourri of Health webpage. And so that's coming down, but I've got all the articles that I want to share over the coming weeks with you. Some will be on herbs, some will be on Lyme disease, some will be nutrition, and a variety of other things. So I hope you stay with me and you kind of glean some information from all of this. So, and I will kind of refer to my notes from time to time, so if I'm reading, just know that that's what I'm doing. And if you wanted to see, to confirm it's something I wrote, you can see that my name is on there. And it is something that I did write, and it was on my blog. Now, the really cool thing about herbs is something that, it's a journey. It was a journey for me. It still is a journey. But that's life. You know, when you encounter different things that change your health, you stop and you think about, how can I make this better? You know, to avoid hospital visits, doctor's visits. And it seems like over the last few years, it's like that's where I go. Although I've cut back quite a bit this year. Over the last couple of years, I've cut back quite a bit. So I want to share with you how one can use the herbs. But you know, where do you get the herbs? Well, most of us, when we first start using herbs, unless you grew up using them for medicinal reasons, is you know that you go to the baking aisle in your grocery store, and that's where you get whatever herbs you need. You might need cinnamon, you might need pepper, you might need paprika, you might need Italian seasonings, because they also sell blends, which you can also make your own from natural herbs as well. But so you don't want to spend that kind of time, and you want direct. You know, you want a cup of tea, rosemary tea, and you don't really want it every day. Like, you know, when I was with Lyme, I was having rosemary and thyme tea all the time. So it was worth me to grow the plant and to preserve it so that I had plenty through the winter months. In my house, it don't get really great lighting, so I have a hard time keeping plants going. So hopefully I'll be able to set up a better lighting system this coming winter. Sometimes they last for like 3 or 4 months, and that's pretty good. So, but what do you do when you can't get them in the baking aisle? Say you're looking for something a little bit different, like periwinkle. Or let me see if I have anything here. Okay, how about bee balm? You don't get those. You don't get these, some might consider fancy, but you don't get the specialty herbs in the grocery aisle of baking goods, because they're not the typical ones that you would use for most recipes that have come along throughout the years. So where do you get these? Well, for me, I grow the bee balm, but let's go back to even the rosemary, the thyme, and all of that. You can actually get some fresh herbs, if you don't grow it, over in your produce aisle of your grocery store. And some health food stores have it, because there's local people that grow it and bring it in and send it in, and they'll be in little packet containers. And what you do with those is you put them in a jar with cool water. You can stick it in the refrigerator if you want, stick it on your window. That way it's getting the water that it needs. Like you and I, we need water or else we die. Plants need water or they die too. So you don't take your herbs and just let them live in the refrigerator, because they'll die, they'll go bad. Maybe they'll keep their color with that added flavoring to it. So I recommend that you just change out the water, and before you put it in the water, wash it, because just even though it might be organic, you want to make sure that it's clean. And so that's one way you can get some additional basic herbs to use on your food that you might want to put on a meatloaf, a steak, potatoes, whatever it is that you want to season up. Will you get bee balm in there? No, you won't, but you'll get the basics. I think it's, you can also get plants too in the produce aisle at times. So you can get little pots, so you can start your own, and they will get full if you water them. And then you have your own little garden, and you can have it inside your house if you've got the right setting. You know, a south-facing window, as well as maybe some lighting. Like in my house, I need special lighting, so we're trying to figure out what I can do this year. So I haven't figured it out yet. So that being said, there are options for you to grow fresh ones. Do you have to? No, because those herbs in the grocery store, in the baking aisle, are still sufficient. You can go to the organic area at your natural food store, and you can order some online. Be careful ordering online. You want to make sure that it's from a company that you trust. Now, sometimes when you get these and you decide, okay, I don't want to have to worry about watering or keeping my thyme and all these other herbs that you went and you were excited about buying at the grocery store, you don't want to be responsible for them dying on your windowsill or in your refrigerator. What you can do, once you're done using them for the meal that you bought them for, just take them and put them in a brown paper bag where there's plenty of air in darkness. So the top of a closet if it's not overcrowded, or in a room that you don't necessarily use very often. Like our bedroom is very dark because of my husband's sleep schedule, and sometimes because I end up taking naps, like this whole week I'll end up taking extra naps because of a medication I'm on. Not too thrilled about it, but I'm on it for a reason to clear an infection. So, you know, you kind of give and take, and naps are not so bad, really. So we keep our bedroom really dark. I have dark shades, dark curtains, and so if you have a room like that, you can put your herbs in a bag, a brown paper bag, lunch bags. Those are pretty inexpensive. I've gotten them at the Dollar Tree store or the $1.25 store, and you can get them at your grocery store. I usually buy them at the grocery store because you can get a bigger bag, and I use that to, like, sometimes when I'm collecting a lot of compost stuff, or at least I used to before the chickens, I would use them and throw them in there in a bucket. Made it easier so it's just one trip out all the time. So those are some options of where you can get some of your herbs. Now, if you want to order from places, just know. But remember, the best thing to do with herbs, if you're new to it and you want to try a tea, say you want some bee balm tea, check with your natural food store, see if they have some, and they'll give you a little baggie of it, and you'll be able to try it. Maybe I could put some up on Etsy for you so that you could try it. Now, when bee balm comes in, this is how it comes in. I've showed this because I did a bee balm video earlier, and this has been in the house for a couple of hours. I brought it in when I closed the chickens up, but it's beautiful and it smells heavenly. Now, we all have different ideas of what smells heavenly. I like it, and the flavor is phenomenal. Now, you can make a tea out of bee balm and just put it in there. But, you know, the bee balm comes in all through the month of July and August, sometimes into September, at least in my neighborhood, in my yard. And so I don't have it throughout the winter months, which is generally when I drink it, because I use bee balm for headaches and needing to calm my body down. And I consume it with chamomile. Now, you can get chamomile in tea bags at the grocery store too. Just make sure you get a good brand, and you can, you know what, there's plenty of research out there so you can find out if they're quality. There's sites out there that kind of give you a rundown of the quality of different teas for just about anything that you're interested in purchasing. Now, after I dry the bee balm, it looks like this. You can see the flowers, and you save the leaves. What I do is I collect the flowers and the red leaves, because it goes your flower, then the leaves are a beautiful burgundy red, and then they go to green. But if you see a bud starting, just cut above that and let that bud start a new flower. And then what happens after that's dried, like right now I have plenty in a larger jar somewhere in my storage. I keep everything in a dark area for my herbs so they last longer. But so I'll take this when the season is done and I will grind it up. This is in my kitchen, so I have easy access to it. I take it out of the big jar. And this is bee balm, all crushed down using a coffee grinder. And so it smells amazing. It smells just as beautiful as the fresh herb. Now, this, I don't even remember what was in here. I've been using this jar for a long time. Another way to store your herbs, you don't have to go out and buy mason canning jars. Now I do when I have a big jar, because if I have a bulk of it, I like to put it in a larger jar. It's easy for me to kind of like shake around, or compact, and it's just easier for me because I have everything like sizes. But as I bring things into the kitchen to have readily available to me, I will use various jars like this. I think it was an olive jar. But you know, this would have a scent to it like a pickle jar would. Now a lot of people say, oh, you shouldn't use that. Well, actually you can. You just wash it out really good. Use Dawn dish detergent or whatever brand dish detergent you want. And then you could put, after that, you can put a little bit of baking soda and vinegar in there. Shake it up, okay? Shake that jar up, and then just let it, rinse it out. It'll still have the smell a little bit. And then let it sit out in the sun for a week, 2 weeks, whatever. And eventually you won't have that smell in the glass jar. And I like glass jars much better than plastic, but I'm going to show you something else too. And you can use jars. This here is my molasses jar. I save these, and I'm going to use it in front of you today. And here, my husband grew up and he loved the goober, the peanut butter jelly jam. And we haven't seen it in a while, and he found some and he picks it up. So anytime we see it, I pick it up for him because it's one of his favorites of the blend. Even though he likes my jams, this I think brings back really fond memories of his childhood. Plus it's easy. He dips in, spreads it on his bread, and off he goes. I think he's weird. But you know what? We don't buy it very often, and so when we do see it, he picks up 1 or 2 jars, and it's like perfect. But I told him, I get the jars if you're going to do this. And he uses jars in his shop for nails and screws and stuff like that. And anybody who has a wood shop might understand what he uses it for. So here's, now I didn't show you a plastic jar. Now this was my honey, one of my honeys came in a plastic container. And so what I did, this here is my thyme. And I've been collecting a lot of it, so I'm just putting it in here until I have a chance to put it in a larger glass jar. So I keep shaving that plant right down, and it keeps growing because I use thyme in a lot of things. So I will be putting this in a larger jar and then in a small jar to have here in my kitchen. So those are some things that you can do as you're collecting it. So you don't have to have canning jars. I prefer glass jars. I don't have a problem with using nice quality plastic jars when necessary. I don't even know why I bought a jar, a plastic one, but I think I was at a where is this? Yep, this was up in Vermont. There's a place that I sometimes go to after a doctor's appointment. I'll go over there and I'll pick up my honey, and I'll pick up raw nuts and that type of stuff. And so it's not too far out of the way for me after my physician's appointment. So, and I haven't been going up there very often, so I don't get it. So, but I think that's where I got this, but generally, most of the jars I buy, like the ones I've been buying lately here in my town, have been glass jars, and that's my preference. And I reuse all my honey jars. As you can see, this particular one is being used for bee balm. So that's one way in which you can store it. And once you have your herbs in there, what I do is, you'll see right there, there's an oxygen absorber. Instead of dry sealing with the brake bleeder, I've shown you how to do that before. I'm in my herbs so much, so I just put an oxygen absorber in there, and it's fine. My herbs stay fine, and I'm going to be using this tonight to show you how I make a tincture. Really easy. So, but like this here, I've been putting my parsley in that's been coming in from my garden. So it's just, the more you cut your herbs, if you're growing them, you can let it go bushy, but the more you prune it, the more you get. And that is how you accumulate some herbs that you can use, saving you from having to go to the grocery store. So keep that in mind if there is an herb you use a lot and is local that you can get a plant. So let's see, what else do I have here that I wanted to share with you? And like, I make my own chamomile tea, such as with the bee balm. I combine bee balm and chamomile tea. And I think I shared that in my bee balm video. So I have my chamomile in this jar, and I have some more that I'm harvesting that will go into this jar once I empty this. So a new jar is started just so that I can use up the old and not put the new on top. So you want to rotate this just like you do if you're putting food on your shelf. Like, I can food as I get it. I don't have a lot of vegetables. I have tons of tomatoes. I don't know when they're going to turn red, but they're coming along. So I'm sure there's going to come a week in a few weeks, and I'm going to just be in the kitchen canning tomatoes. You want to make sure that you date everything. Like, you saw that I labeled this as bee balm. I know that this is this year. And what I do is I put things behind each other if there's another jar. If they're all from the same time frame of collection, I don't worry about that. If they are something that I bought in bulk, I don't worry about it either, because what I do is I keep track of what I'm using, and I sometimes will purchase ahead of time as I get lower. So I know that not to open that Mylar bag until I'm ready. Now let's see, there's some other notes from my blog that now, herbs are available for consumption, and a lot of people don't know that you can use them for medicinal reasons. If you've been listening to me for a while, you know that it is. And if you go to a health food store, you know. But not everybody is interested in herbs, so they don't know the medicinal values of various herbs. And oftentimes people learn about it haphazardly. Like, they'll go along and somebody will say, oh, you want chamomile tea to help you rest. So they'll buy chamomile, and that's how they learn about it. But to learn about all the amazing herbs that are out there, it's actually very, very eye-opening. Because one thing that people don't realize is that herbs have been here forever. And, you know, when God created our earth, he made it balanced. You have your human life, you have your animal life, you have water, you have green, you have fruit, you have vegetables, you have herbs. And, you know, in biblical times, they were making essential oils. They were doing a lot with all this. So medicine has always been here. Now, that it can be considered, let's see, which basically, herbalism is based on the use of plants and plant extracts, and that's known as traditional medicine or folk medicine. Now, we call it herbalism because we're using the plants, but medicine from the pharmaceuticals started it when they discovered that some herbs were not sufficient for the illnesses that they were dealing with. So that's where the pharmaceutical companies came along, was to say, wait a minute, everybody's gonna get so sick we can't help them if we use up everything that's out there. So they take the properties that are in a herb and they will chemically make it. Things are different today on how they make medicine, and I don't know if they base it all on plants anymore. I know that some of them still do. And I don't study pharmacology. I took a summer course in nutrition. It was a college course with my medical coding course work. And that was very in-depth. I learned a lot, but that course was 40 hours a week for me for 8 weeks. And I was like exhausted because I never took a college course that was that intense. But my professor was amazing. So it was worth the experience. And so I learned a lot about nutrition during that time. But I still, even during then, I was talking to him all the time about, well, what about the herbs? Why can't we use it here? So he was also my pharmacology professor as well. So it was really kind of interesting to kind of get insight on both areas. So that being said, why do I use herbs? Because there's no additives, there's no preservatives, there's no middleman, meaning I can pay for my herbs, and they're not cheap when you buy, but I can grow some, and it saves me a lot of money. And because I use them all the time, it's worth it to me. Now, one thing that you'll learn if you decide to go into herbalism is what part of the plant do you use? Such as in the bee balm, I use the flower and I use the leaves. In dandelion root, let me see, I think I have that here. I did, but I think it's hiding on me. There it is, underneath a note. Okay, what I do in the spring is I see dandelions coming up. I grab those dandelions. I tried dehydrating the flowers, and it's just, to me, it's not worth it, whether I've tried the bag and all the others. So I don't dehydrate the flower. I just pick them, have some tea, or add it in a salad. But I don't consume it constantly while they're available, because that actually is not good for you. And why I'm saying that is people assume that, oh, this is really good for you, this is really healthy, I'm going to consume this, I'm going to eat all the dandelions in my yard. Please don't. It's actually not good. It can become very toxic when you have too much of a good thing. Now, the reason I said something about dandelion is that some things like the bee balm, I use the flower and the leaves. With kudzu, I'm going to be working with soon, you use the root. Well, with parsley, you use the leaf. You know, and a variety of other things. The chamomile, you use the flower. But with dandelions, you use the root. And here is a root that I harvested this past spring. Now, typically, you do not harvest your dandelion roots in the spring, or actually, you're not supposed to, but you can still harvest them in the spring because they're easier to find. The best time to harvest them is in the fall. This is something I learned, is just the way the plant life grows and stuff. So the dandelion flower and the leaves are great for spring, summer salads. The root is what I use for tinctures and teas. So you want to save them in the fall. Now, this is another plastic container. Some people, if you eat the Talenti ice cream, my husband likes this. That's another thing. The plastic ones are my temporary until the season is over. But what you do with the root is you take it in and you wash it, you rinse it really good, and then you let it dry on a paper towel. You don't need to put it in the oven, you don't need to do any of that. You just let it sit on a paper towel and let it dry out. And then you have your dandelion root. And I will tell you, collecting dandelion roots is tedious. And because I have back issues and joint issues from time to time, in the spring it's hard, and in the fall it's hard. Summertime I do better. But so if you can't get down there, you might discover it's a pain in the neck, and you have to take a root spade to pull it out, because you can break the root. Now, is it bad to break the root? No, it won't hurt what you're trying to accomplish by having dandelion root. What it does is, what I think is a benefit is the dandelions will come back. And I'm okay with that, because I think it, first of all, it feeds the pollinators and it feeds us. So it's all good. So that's one way of doing that. Now, let's see if there's something else here I wanted to. Some people think that herbalism is the same as essential oils and all of that. It actually is under another umbrella of holistic options and stuff. We make tinctures, and like I said, I'm going to show you how I make one. We make tinctures. We make extracts. Now extracts don't last as long as tinctures, and the tinctures last a while, and the reason mine will last a while is because I'm using vodka. You can use vegetable glycerin, which is the recommended glycerin that I would recommend because it's from vegetables and stuff, or you can use glycerin from the pharmacy shelves. I prefer the vegetable one more so when I'm making like elderberry syrup for my grandchildren. I don't necessarily want other things, so I will use the glycerin in theirs, and that because well, my grandkids are old enough now, so honey's not an issue, but that's what you can do. That's an option. And if you're one who has alcohol tendencies, you may want to stay away from the vodka tincture. You might want to use glycerin, vegetable glycerin, to do your tinctures, and that will be okay. I mean, we have to take care of ourselves. Once we understand any disease that we have or any complication we deal with, when we take care of ourselves, we have to take those little things into consideration so that we can better care for ourselves. Now, I don't drink much, and the amount of vodka I get with all my tinctures when I take them in the morning, I did measure it once. It was like a tablespoon. Now, I don't do well with alcohol at all because it makes me dizzy, and I'm not talking about a glass of wine like somebody else might be able to enjoy. It's just like just a little bit, and I'll be out. So I don't use alcohol much, and so the tablespoon, speaking with a couple of my specialists, they said no, that's not something to worry about, and so that's what I do. The tinctures, I'll get into that. So those are okay for people who don't drink, and how do I want to put this? I never had alcohol in my home while I was raising my girls. I just had no interest. But as they got older and I started working with herbs like around 2006, and I know I talk about like 2014 is when I got the Lyme. That's when I got really heavy into it. But it was in 2006 there was a medical issue that required that I made a choice to, okay, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a more natural way to be safer for my body. So I didn't do a lot between then and 2014. I just learned as I went. But I never made tinctures, and that's where I am here. So what I want to go on to next is, okay, so one thing that I said was I'm going to go into methods and ways that you can use herbs. Well, we all know that we can use them for seasoning, whether we use them for meatloaf, soups, stews, spaghetti sauce, different meats, venison. Oh my gosh. My husband's not a venison fan, but I make a mean venison. But he hasn't brought one home in a long time. So I asked him, I'm hoping that he goes out hunting this year, because he doesn't like venison as much, but I adore it. So we'll see what happens there. Will I be upset if he goes out and he doesn't bring one home? No, because it wasn't meant to be. I just kind of hope. So we can use it for seasonings, and that's what typically most people know. The other way is to use it as teas. So tonight, I don't have a headache, but I do want to relax my body. So I will be using it I will be using the chamomile. I'll mix a little bit of chamomile in with my bee balm. So that will help me rest much easier tonight. But you can do plain chamomile. You can get the tea bags at the store, as I said before, or you can make your own blends. Like I made, if you followed me, there is a video where I shared about the tea that I made for my husband, a respiratory tea. It wasn't a recipe I found elsewhere. It's just that I looked at what I had and I said, okay. And I started plopping in everything that I had, equal amounts, and it actually soothed his throat. And so by the time he got in to see the physician, because he really needed to do the countdown steroid, because it sounded to me like it was starting to go into the pneumonia stage. And how do I know? I had a daughter who almost died from pneumonia, and my husband, a month later, came down with pneumonia. I know what pneumonia sounds like, I know what it looks like, and it's scary. So I told him, I said, you need to do something and you need to go in to see the doctor. So I made him the tea. I mean, I could hear him. It was awful to watch. Yet this tea helped him to the point that when he went into the doctor, he could tell him the experience he had, and he still got his countdown steroid because he still needed that to calm his lungs and whatever else the steroid does. So he's all better, and he still drinks the tea, because when we have allergies, we can get soreness in our throat. He finds that it helps him for that, and I have had it too, and it's a really delightful tea. So herbal teas can be found beyond the local natural food store and in our local supermarkets. There are many brands, and the brand is going to be important, so you need to know what's a quality one. Not all manufacturers practice safe manufacturing practices. They can put fillers in, and they can do other things like that. And you'd be amazed at what's in some teas. The inexpensive teas you might discover might have sawdust in it. You might, and I know, it's like, oh, you can't be kidding. Look it up. I'm not saying this to say stop drinking your tea. I'm just saying be aware of what kind of tea you are drinking. You know, the best part about making your own tea, you get to go in your backyard, and as you're drinking your tea during the winter months when you don't have the flowers and stuff growing, it's just kind of like you sit back and you just enjoy the moment. It's a relaxing time. Now, when you're making teas, you generally tend to steep the herb in hot water, not boiling. You want it just before it starts to boil, and you want to steep it for 5 to 20 minutes. It depends on the type of herb that you are using. Delicate things like flowers, you want it for 5 to 7 minutes. Things a little bit tougher, like I'll show you the kudzu here. That's pretty thick, that's a root. So the dandelion root, those you might want to steep 15 to 20 minutes. Your choice. Another method is to put the herbs in a pot with water and cook for 5 or 20 minutes. So it's really what you want to do. I sometimes do put the hot water in a tea. I have a glass tea kettle, and I didn't get it out. I also have this coffee press. I've done my herbs in this and made a tea out of that. So you just put your hot water in the coffee press, and you let it steep for the same thing, 5 to 20 minutes, depending on the type of herb that you're using. And let's see what else. Okay, and then before you drink, you strain it so that you have the liquid. Now, some people just drink their tea with the herb in it. That's not an issue if that's okay with you. And I've done that because sometimes the time, it's little things, and it ends up getting into my teacup, and I really don't mind because I use thyme in some of my cooking. So, how it goes in, whether as an herbal benefit or not, it doesn't matter. I infuse the herbs in water and bring to a boil. You let it sit for 6 hours. Okay, so that's another way of doing it. And then you strain, you bottle, and refrigerate to consume over a number of days. So you can do that with some herbs. Okay, so there's advantage of consuming herbs as tea. Let's see. Is their benefits are quickly absorbed by the body. So that's kind of nice. It's better than, having to take a pill and waiting for it to take effect. The antibiotic I'm on right now, I can't have it any sooner than 8 hours. I was kind of hoping to be able to do that, but the pharmacist said, no, you really want to, or you're going to have an upset stomach. I don't even want to be on the antibiotics, never mind have an upset stomach. But with tea, it's not that way. Let's see, it has a potential of immediate results, and that is true. I have consumed tea and got rid of my headaches within a half an hour. For long-term benefits, consuming tea for medicinal purposes or other health benefits, one may need to consume the tea several times a day over a period of time. Now, that's all relative to the type of tea that you're going to drink, because some are as potent as a pharmaceutical drug. So you need to be well aware of what your teas are. But the things like over the counter and stuff like that, like chamomile and other things, it's not like thyme and oregano leaf. Those are really not going to be an issue. So the disadvantage is that some teas can have a very strong taste and sometimes a strong odor. With those who need to acquire some additional medicinal benefits, they can add stevia. And if you're going to use stevia, make sure it's green, not the white powder stuff they're making, because that's been bleached out. If you look at a stevia plant, the color is green. That's the natural state in which you want stevia. Not everybody likes stevia. My husband doesn't. He finds it doesn't have the sweet taste of regular sugar, even organic sugar. It doesn't have that sweet taste, but you can use organic sugar or you can use honey. We prefer to use honey in our teas. Now I'm going to make a tincture with you, and this here, let's see, this one here is one that I made. It's oregano leaf. The one that I need to replace is some kudzu. Now, why do I make kudzu tinctures? I started making this because of all the pain I deal with Lyme disease. But it also helps with other inflammatory things. So it's anti-inflammatory, it's antioxidant, and it eases menopausal symptoms. So now, okay, if you're a guy, you don't have that, it'll still help the inflammation. So don't get snarky with me. So what you do, this is my kudzu root, and I am going to use a molasses jar. And what I'm going to do is I am going to, would you like to watch? I'm just going to use, let's see, how much do I want? You know what? I get lazy. What I'm going to do is I'm going to fill this jar up, usually halfway. So that's the root. So it's not halfway up, it's about a third of the way. So I'm going to put this all back together. And then what you do, you can use vegetable glycerin or you can use vodka. Some people use wine, and using wine gives it a different type of flavor. Today I'm using vodka. So you see where it is right here. I am going to fill it up to about right there. I think I'm going to keep it there because I really want it strong. So I'm not going all the way up. But basically, you shake it a little bit. And you label it and you put it in the dark. And if you don't have a dark place, put a paper bag over it or a towel or something, but put it in a place where you're not going to knock it over. And you let that sit for 30 days. So you date this in case you forget. The other best thing is put it on your phone calendar. It'll remind you that, oh, I got to go check it. But every day, shake it. Now, typically, I use a small jelly jar, canning jar for some of these tinctures. But I have this, and, you know, so it's like I don't have a lot of canning jars right now, so I'm trying to conserve those. So this will work. What will happen after 30 days is the water, you can see that it's starting to turn brown. It'll actually become a very rich, deep brown. And I'll be honest with you, Kudzu root is not the most flavorful, but it does wonders for the inflammation, and that's what I use it for. And I've got some inflammation going on in my foot, and so I'm using this along with my turmeric with pepperine that I make. So that is one way that you can use your herbs, is you can make tinctures. And it's easy. So tinctures are easily accessible, so you don't have to make them. You can actually purchase them. And you can get them at food stores, and sometimes drugstores have them as well as online retailers. You can also get them from your holistic provider. They actually make them as well. And I know that I'll be seeing a holistic provider in a few months, and she makes them as well for her patients. Now, what she does different than me is she's got it all figured out. She weighs differently than me. I just put it together based on my experience of what works for me, and that's what I use. So I can't sell you a tincture, but I can sell you the root, if that makes any sense. Let's see. You can use powders. So what you do is you just grind your herbs up in a pestle like this, or whatever, and you just grind it into a powder. And you can use herbs like that. I think I've shown you that I use eggshells and I make a calcium supplement with that. Let's see, there's no additional process beyond grind it into a powder. And it might seem difficult to do that, but it works. And you can do it. And you know what? Get some body movement going on, folks. They are very cost effective, and they can be used in smoothies. That's something that I was doing a lot of it. I would take all my herbal remedies and I would put them in a smoothie, because when I first started using them, it was hard. I had a hard time with the flavors of everything. So I just put them into my smoothie and it's great. And to go back to tinctures, if I'm having a smoothie and I don't want to take my supplement capsules that I make, I will put all those herbs into my smoothie. And you can also take your tincture that you made and you can put your drops in that. I want to go back to the tinctures part. Tinctures, you start slow, usually about 10 drops per tincture, to see how you respond to it. If it helps, like in this case, if it helps with my inflammation, that's the amount you use. Another thing to take into consideration is I have a high sensitivity to alcohol, so I don't take as much in tincture form as other people. So if you're one who drinks wine all the time, you could probably start at 10 and go up in 2 to 5 drops as you move up. And I think the most is 20. It depends on the tincture, and you just kind of work your way up to what you can tolerate, but also get the relief you're looking for whatever symptom you're dealing with. So you're harvesting and stuff. Say I wanted to put my bee balm into a powder form and put it into something. You just put it into the pestle and you grind it up. Could I put it into the coffee grinder? Yes, but it will not go down to a powder form completely. As you can see, it doesn't go to complete powder. So chamomile might, that turns that way. So those are actually kind of a nice way to do that. Capsules and tablets. I have shared with you how I make my turmeric capsules, and those, it just makes it a lot easier. You want your powdered form, and you just put it into the capsules. Let's see. Now, sometimes your physician, now I know physicians, physical therapists, and nutritionists are now recommending turmeric because a lot of people are raving about it. When I went to one physician for my back, and at that time he couldn't do anything, he says, Laura, you might want to use turmeric. Well, he didn't tell me, because I was using turmeric and I was like pumping them, I was consuming them like candy, but it wasn't doing anything. You really need to have the peppering, and that's something that they might know now, but sometimes not all physicians who are recommending stuff may not know that key factor. It's like vitamin D needs vitamin K to help with your bones. So when you're out in the sun collecting your vitamin D, you want to make sure you're consuming foods with vitamin K. And I'll go into that in another video. You can make lotions and salves. Now, what I did the other day was I made, this is the, I have that written down, Comfrey. I made this Comfrey Ointment. And as you can see, my husband and I have been using it a lot. I made another jar too, and I gave it to my daughter because she gets a lot of back pain. So you use that and you just rub it in. So this, there is a video on how to make Comfrey Ointment like this. This is a balm of some sort, or a salve. You can also take your herbs and you can break them apart. Even the comfrey, and just break it, kind of crush it. If you're out and you don't have time to make a salve like this, just put it on your body and then wrap it, and it'll take some pain away and it'll heal wounds. Let's see, there's Arnica people use. I don't find Arnica works for me, but it works for others. Calendula, it's a flower I'm growing this year. I'm so excited because it's a beautiful flower and it works wonderfully for making salves and so forth. And you can use it in making wine. You can use it making a variety of things. And okay, I just said wine. You can make wine out of your herbs. You can make your own herbs, not just from strawberries or blueberries and stuff. You can make wine that, you know, for those who enjoy wine, that's one way to do it. Now, I've got some that is working on that I will use in my tinctures. So I'm not making the wine to sit down and drink. I'm not interested in that. But it'll be interesting to kind of experiment and see how my tinctures turn out. So you can use them for washes and compresses and poultices. Let's see, I want to go over this a little bit with you. Infusions of herbs made into a decoction can be applied to the skin as a wash. These are not taken internally, but rather applied directly to a specific area and added to, it can be added to a hot bath for a whole body benefit. You know, like bath salts? You can put lavender in there. Lavender baths are great. So I recommend putting something at the drain so you don't get all these lavender petals down into your piping and stuff. So those are some things to think about. But you can use your herbs in a bath. And it just, as the hot water absorbs those benefits, it just smells amazing. You can put chamomile in, you can put oatmeal. There's various things, and I'll be sharing recipes. Those will be shorter videos. Let's see, I was back up there. Herbal creams, salves, washes, compresses. In addition to an infusion made into a decoction, these infusions can be made into useful compress. So you can make, like, say you have some comfrey leaves. You can make a salve type thing and put it in some towels, like cotton. I would recommend cotton. And you get it all moist. Put it into your freezer. And then when you need it, you can take it out. And you can use it a few times before the herb is spent. And at that point, you take your spent herb and throw it in your compost to benefit the compost. Let's see, poultices use the whole herb versus the liquid infusion. So that's kind of what I was talking about, but the comfrey. Remember, you can use both the root and the leaf of comfrey, but it is best not to. And do not ingest either. I use only the leaves because they haven't shown that the leaf can affect your liver. Yeah, that's what it is. But the root can. So please do not use the root for anything ingesting. It's like essential oils. There's people out there that say, no, you can consume them. You can consume them. It's safe. Unless you are working with a licensed person, somebody who has worked with these things for years. And I'm not talking about, sorry, I don't mean to slam you. If you are in a multi-level marketing firm, they are not trained the way that somebody who works with this solely and it's their business. So my recommendation, do not consume essential oils. And they are made from the plant, but it's not safe to consume. They're not designed for that. There are some that you can, and I did buy one for consumption. It was made just for that, and it was just like one drop because it was that strong. But generally speaking, you don't. Now, there's going to be some people out there that says, well, I do it all the time. I haven't died yet. It's like, okay, you keep going. I'm recommending that you don't. And I do not do it in my house. And I don't allow anybody in my family to consume essential oils. I want to add some other notes that I had written out. Be aware that herbs are nature's gift for our health. They should be respected and not consumed in excess, like I shared earlier. Similar to that of pharmaceutical prescriptions, supplements and herbal preparations can have a negative effect on one's health if consumed in excess. That's another thing I wanted. Herbal remedies, here's the other one I wanted to make sure I pointed out. Herbal remedies can interfere with any pharmaceutical drug that you are taking. They can also have an impact on your surgery. If you're going in for surgery, they will tell you not to take any of your herbals because part of the reason is first of all, they're not sure of what kind of impact. Now, they can sometimes research it, but if you research it and you tell them, yeah, I'm going to take these all off. When I went in for surgery, I just went off all of them because I looked at them. Most of them can cause bleeding. Now, I don't have a problem with bleeding, but why put myself at risk on the operating table? Sorry, they're doing a job to make me better. So why would I make their job harder because I refuse? I'm going to use my herbs. I don't mean to sound crass, but don't be arrogant. If you're going to them to trust them to do your surgery, then honor them by not doing those herbals before you go in until you understand how all of this works. Let's see. If you decide you will be supplementing with herbs, in some cases herbs can increase the effects of your prescribed medication. And even when I got my antibiotic, I checked. For the herbs that I take, I make sure that none of them will interact. Like they can negate how effective your herb is. They can negate the effect of your medication and vice versa. And so you want to, I would think that if you're on a medication, you're doing it because you want to be better. If you want to do herbs to be better, you need to make a choice and then talk to an herbalist who can help you if you don't understand. There are some herbs in which you should not take for more than a short period of time. Every herb is different, and that's why it's very important as you begin using herbs to understand. Now, I might be putting fear into a lot of people. It's like, oh, this is just too much work. That means I have to spend time researching. I have to. Yeah, you do. But isn't that the best thing about taking care of you is to understand what you're putting into your body? You say some people, they don't want pharmaceuticals, but they just want to go and pick things out of the garden. Well, you need to understand how all of this works. Okay, let's see. Even when your physician supports your use of herbs to benefit your medicinal needs, it is vitally important to consider trying one herb at a time. This allows one to discover how each herb affects you. If you have an allergy, it'll show up immediately, or within a few days, or within a few weeks. You know how when you introduce food to an infant? The same thing. When you're introducing herbs to you, you want to take one at a time and see how it affects you. Yes, you are trying to get a benefit, but at the same time, you don't want to take 5 herbs and then all of a sudden you're having allergy attacks, or you're having hives, or you're having heart palpitations and all that kind of stuff. You really need to know what it is that you've added. When I tried adding cilantro into some of my stuff, oh my gosh, I can't eat cilantro. And I know everybody raves about how good it is. I can't, because it just affects how I breathe and my heart and everything else. I really thought I was going to die. But I didn't. I just went in and I drank tons of water, and then I had some activated charcoal because there was something that didn't go well with my body. That is why you do one herb at a time for 3 to 5 days. A week is better. And then you'll know how each herb is affecting you, and take notes. How does, even though you might get a whole list of benefits from an herb, what benefit are you looking for, and what benefit did you derive from it? Just like the pharmaceuticals, I want my infection gone, so I'm taking the antibiotic, but I'm listing out, this is the second time I'm on it, and I had a list of what happened before, and I'm putting a list in it because today I've just been sneezing, and so I don't know if it's that or if it's the allergies. So I'm kind of just watching, it's like within a certain time frame. So I'm just kind of watching it. Does that bother me that I'm sneezing? Slightly. Because if I'm sneezing, that means there's an allergen in there. But also, if I can get rid of it, then I would rather deal with that while my body heals. And yes, always make sure when you're on an antibiotic to use an antifungal or probiotics, whatever works for you. So this took a little bit longer than I wanted to, but this was from an article I wrote in 2018. It was very in-depth. I didn't even cover everything. And I just think it is very important that you understand how to use herbs, but I'm really excited to share that there are so many benefits that are out there in our plant world. And I just think we need to be aware of how we can care for ourselves, and do not push your physician aside when they offer you a pharmaceutical. Ask him questions. If you decide to use herbs, you're keeping notes on how it affects you, right? Okay, so say you have symptoms like you get headaches from certain things, or you get different things like that, and so you ask your physician, okay, how is this going to help me? Because that's the key factor of why they're prescribing it. Second, what are the side effects? Because just like herbs, you need to understand. So I promote using herbs all the way, but we can't always use them. And I think you combine herbs with healthy food. I'm not talking about prepackaged food. I'm talking about healthy food from your garden, from the meat from your farmer, or the meat that like venison. Those are the foods that if you consume healthy versions and avoid the pre-packaged, which have all kinds of additives, you can make your life healthier. Now, does that mean we never have pre-packaged? Nope. There are some things my husband still likes. As you can see, I don't make my own peanut butter. I would like to, but I haven't really gotten that far. So, I don't eat a lot of peanut butter. I put some on some gluten-free crackers from time to time. And every now and then I do buy some gluten-free crackers because I want something different, but I can also make my own crackers. So, am I saying never to eat that stuff? What I'm saying is be aware of the foods you put in your body. If you want to buy prepackaged, use them in moderation. And try to just eat as many vegetables as you can, because a plant-based diet is very healthy. And then for those of you who enjoy meat, I'm one of them. I enjoy eating beef, steak, chicken, fish. I enjoy that. So just be aware of where your food is coming from. But on top of that, use these herbs, even if it's just for a cold or when you have the flu. Use them, and use them wisely. Use them on your food to make your food more palatable and more enjoyable. And use them with respect, the same respect you have with your medicine, or at least I hope you have respect with your medicine. And so I don't want to go on, because I could talk for hours on herbs, and I don't really have that kind of time. I want to go into each herb separately as I move forward. So I know this was a long-winded video. I hope that you made it through, even if you took breaks, because I think it's really important, and I think you'll find that the more I share, you'll be glad that you listened, or at least I hope so. That's my thought. So I hope that you're able to subscribe. I hope that if you like it, you hit the like button. If you want to share this, that would be really great. So I hope you have a lovely evening. Get some great rest so that you can enjoy the rest of your weekend. God bless.